Welcome, friends, in and of an awakening world. And I want to start this week's commentary with a quote from the Taittiriya Upanishad. Yato va imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, yat prayanti avisham vishanti, tat vijjignasasva tat brahmeti. This quote is about you, not the small self you, but you as source, what you actually are. And it says that verily, from which these beings are born, that by which, when born, they live, that into which, when departing, they enter, that seek to know, that is Brahman. And the yama that I want to talk about today is Brahmacharya. And before we talk about sexuality, what most people actually think about when they encounter this yama, I want to talk about its original meaning. Brahmacharya. It comes from the word, charya comes from the word chara. It means to move, to be a vessel for, to move towards what? Brahman. It comes from the root bru. It means to expand, to grow. Brahman is source. So what this yama originally was is a movement towards source, being a vessel for source, moving towards the highest, moving towards the absolute, an orientation towards your essential nature, your divine essence, Brahman, that which is expansive onto itself. It is an orientation of your life towards this divine essence, towards what you are. It is the inherent urge or wish of someone actually to know what is the divine, to know what is that divine self. And it starts with usually coming into a knowing in your life that there is more to life or yourself than just this body-mind, that there is something greater. It is a humility, but this is usually the first step. The first step is to come to know there is something greater, and there is something divine. There is something that orchestrates life on its behalf that is greater than you are, greater than you as this person. This is important. As long as we think we are the doers, we are what manifests this life, as long as this is this inner falsity stipulation, actually, that we are the greatest thing that ever happened to to life or this world. So there's the first thing is there is something greater than myself, something that orchestrates life. and that you have some form of, you can sense that. Either you come into contact with that in your own experience, in your own spiritual experience, there is something greater than myself, or it is just this fundamental understanding and fundamental humility also. It is something that's far greater than any of us. And this is the first step of Brahmacharya, of actually moving in the direction of this divine essence, divine self that you are. And the second step, so there is a knowing, there's an understanding. Something greater is here. Something greater is in charge of this planet, this world, every being in it. I have this fundamental understanding. And if the divine is difficult for you, then consciousness, more neutral understanding of what is in charge. And then the second step is usually to have a relationship to that divine. Yoga philosophy also talks about that. That's where Ishvara comes in. Ishvara pranidhana. Again, a surrender to something higher. And this also comes from life. You see that you don't, your mind, our limited mind, our limited perception that we have, our sense apparatus, doesn't always know, isn't always in charge, doesn't have the control. This comes actually also from your life's experience. To know this, you can wish and will, but there is a higher wish, a higher will, a higher trajectory for your life. And this isn't always clear to you. It isn't always that you know what is gonna happen. It isn't always that what is deeply wished for you on a higher level is known to you on this small self level. And this is something that you experience. And from that you also come to face that you are not the doer on this small self level. And then you usually have a relationship, all the forms of bhakti, different forms of relationship to this divine essence that we have. And there's a fundamental surrender also to that, a fundamental worship. Many of the religions, Catholic religion, for example, you have a fundamental relationship with God, with this greater essence. And the fundamental problem, obviously, is that there's still duality. You still see a duality to the divine. You still perceive a duality to this greater essence. But it is also a necessary step because you have to know that on this small self level, you are not the doer. And there has to be this fundamental humility, fundamental surrender, and also actually this devotion, like to know what is devotion, devotion to this higher principle, devotion to something greater. And it isn't just a devotion that is stipulated in ritual, even though you might have your rituals, you might have your spiritual practices, your spiritual disciplines that help you have this kind of relationship or help you make space in your life for this divine essence or whatever it is. But it is also very practical. What is the divine in your life? It is your life. It is what displays itself as your life. That's the divine as your life. And then the surrender, the Ishvara Pranidhana, becomes something very practical. It means to open yourself to this life, to surrender to this life. It doesn't mean, so always be very mindful. It doesn't mean that you don't care for yourself, you don't care for your life, you don't have a healthy life. It just means that all the resistance to life, all the stipulations on life, the continuous resistance to what is let go of, knowing that this life emerges out of God or out of your greater essence or out of consciousness for you distinctly as a greater plan, a greater knowing. And that this whole scenery, what unfolds itself, the environment you're in, people you are in, that they are all actually the divine. They are all also the divine. Everything you see, you witness, you are aware of your life, what displays itself is the divine in its expression. It displays the divine in its expression also. It displays you. And to know this also, these are all parts of your greater self. And the whole show that displays itself is this grand spectacle of life that actually allows each one to come into the learning that they desire, to come into the knowing of what they desire. It's often not the case that the small self always knows this, but these kind of themes that the soul wants to explore, what is love, what is unconditional love, what is true wisdom, what is truth, all these kind of things. How these experiences distinctly catapult each one of you actually in this direction of this deeper knowing, of this deeper finding, an instigation, an invitation continuously, and a greater invitation to come from that love. And this is all already actually practiced in this encounter with your higher self or with your divine self, Ishvara Pranidhana, Brahman, moving in the direction of coming to know what is God, what is the divine. It starts not only by worship, starts not only by spiritual experiences, it starts with life, knowing life is God. Everything that emerges is God, your environment, these people, whatever it is, the world is God. No longer having this resistance to it, surrendering. It is a learning actually, also that learning propels you already towards self-realization because you're learning to surrender. The small self will need to surrender for you to realize the self. It will need to be let go of. It is a handing over. You're handing yourself over towards the divine that you are. In order to do that, that small self needs to be let go of, and its whole stipulation to be a separate entity needs to be let go of. And so that's what you are practicing. You're coming actually in that, as you are moving towards the divine that you are already continuously coming back to that stillness, coming back to that knowing, coming back to that surrender. You're practicing surrendering. You're practicing letting go of your mental ideas about what this life should be like for you, about what it is that you now want, desires of this moment. It all comes to the background of what is the actual desire of the self. Why are you here? And the more you surrender to this life as it is, the more you see that there is a threat for you. You're just allowing the river to flow as it is, knowing it comes from source. You as source. So this is the second step. And oftentimes really this devotion is practiced. And oftentimes in this step of moving towards the highest or moving towards that God self, there is also this deep devotion to this divine. So the continuous remembrance. And that remembrance, some people have rituals, other people have mantras. It doesn't matter. It is also humbling yourself. It is a remembrance that the small self needs to humble itself. And if it doesn't, it will get humbled. It's just what it is, so that it can let go of this mental construct of what it perceives to actually be, which isn't what you are. And then the last step of after like all this connection to the divine is becoming one with the divine. It's coming to know what is actually the divine. The divine is the space of I am, but even beyond that, beyond any stipulations of an I. It is the unified essence of what you are. It is the indescribable presence that has actually no more subject in it, neither an object or a subject. Indescribable essence. That is what you are and what you can find yourself to be, and what you can come to know yourself to be as. And the difficult part about it is really this knowing that you are that, right? You are that. You are that. It is not refutable at all at some point anymore, that you are that. And yet there is this display of form. There is your body and this display of form. And so that's why Jesus said, me and my Father are one. Because you will always, the mind, at the moment you localize yourself, the moment you come back to your mind, the moment you try to figure things out, the moment you actually take on a perspective, you are coming from a distinct perspective again. You are localizing yourself. And from that viewpoint of the localization, it's always then that there is this greater intelligence. Me and my Father are one. And at the same time, you are this infinite intelligence. And that's what you need to come to know before and prior and beyond and amidst. Always the awareness and what is even beyond that. That's the path of Brahmacharya. I am moving towards the divine. This is again one of the yamas, and one of the things that can orient someone to want to know the divine, to want to become a vehicle for the divine, to want to surrender to the divine. It is something that maybe your heart longs for, and that can again orient you and immensely catapult you. And in the moment of realizing yourself as that, again, you hand yourself over. You become a conscious agent for that. You know yourself as that. You are prompted from that. And the self-conscious entity that you take yourself to be all your life before that is surrendered, is given up. The chess game is finished then. And then you're no longer stipulating, no longer resisting your life, nor are you resisting what is coming distinctly through you in each moment. There's no this self-conscious entity that has all these strange, often self-sabotaging and often, paradox ideas of what is its next move. All this is not and at the same time, a lot of the things that are usually stipulated, they just fall off. Activity arises out of the stillness, out of the intelligence of the self. And often also without much of the thinking apparatus. This is something that is unimaginable, but that don't oftentimes not many thoughts are needed for you to fulfill actually what you are meant to do each day, each moment, even within a more universal kind of setting, and even for you to be of service. Not so much thinking needs to be happening. You are that. You are that divine essence, Brahmacharya. You are moving towards the divine. And as this is prompting you deeply into surrender, deeply into devotion, deeply into all these things that are actually necessary for you to realize what you are. Giving up, knowing, this deep knowing already, actually. You know you are what you are is divine. You know you are source, but not the small self, even though the small self also arises and is also source in each moment with its constructed complex ideas also. But you want to know what is Brahman, the divine, what expands onto itself. Now, many people, when they hear Brahmacharya, all they think about is celibacy. Because how does this come? Schools in the past centuries in India were ashrama, culture of ashrama. It meant actually a school. We already see what these schools were actually intending. What was an original hope for was to study actually also what is the divine, to study what is the true self, not just to study what all can fit into one's mind, and to continuously draw from that and imagine new things and new ideas and new thoughts, but also to go back What is before thought? What is before mind? What unites us all? What is the divine? What is this most fundamental essence? That was ashrama. The modern ashrams come from that, still displaying places in which you actually talk about the self, the true self, in which this is the main focus of your attention. Now, in these ashramas, in these schools, there was the whole stage of young children, usually between 12 and 20 or 12 and 25, and this was called Brahmachari. Those that focus on study, a focus on finding out what is the divine, a focus on reading those sacred texts, a focus on just having this discipline. And so also obviously in this stage, puberty, after puberty and ending, it was about not becoming so distracted by your sexual impulses that you can actually focus on that you focus on this Brahmacharya. And so it became also a lot about that then. But the original meaning is to move towards the divine. And oftentimes, in religions and whatever came up, yeah, this was such a big issue then for people to suppress or negate, don't allow whatever it is with sexuality to have this somehow not being looked at. And the funny thing about it is that as you actually realize what you are, yeah, as you come to know you aren't your sensations. This is also something that you will have to actually detach from. No, you aren't found in any of the sensations. On a more thought level, sensations are also just thoughts. It is that you can also sit with these kind of sensations, witness them as they are without identifying with them anymore, without your need to identify or respond to them. It's immensely freeing also. You're not found even in sexual impulses or sensations. And as someone realizes what they are, these kind of desire bases, and also just that the knowing you aren't them, you don't have to identify with them. It isn't necessary for you to identify with them. This also becomes known to you, and it becomes more and more emptied out. It also actually means that what is sometimes stipulated or thought of, that someone who has realized this has still these very intense desires, and it's actually not really so much the case. It's more and more emptied out, more and more. It doesn't mean it doesn't take place or it cannot happen for someone in someone's life. It just means that the compulsion and the identification and that you think you are this is no longer the case. It's just emptied out. There is also detachment from sensations. All forms of sensations get looked at and get you are from that watchfulness, that awareness, that level of presence. It means again, it's very difficult for, sometimes to listen to, but it doesn't mean cannot take place. It just means that the whole idea around it, identification with it, that this is you and that this is a necessity and this needs to be happening, all of it is no longer the case. It is seen as what it is, another form of thought, another form of identification. And that's also, it can be extremely freeing to a lot of people, have immense compulsions around this, or where the mind takes them in this direction. Then also know there is you have the capacity to witness and negate sensations as essentially yours, or you, as always also the case. So this is Brahmacharya. So now that we talked about this movement towards the divine, movement towards the highest, he says, if someone is deeply established in Brahmacharya, then an intense vitality will be present. Means if you are moving as towards the divine, as the divine, coming to know yourself as the divine, there is this vitality that allows you to do whatever it is that is then prompted for you. You will be able to fulfill all these tasks. You will be able to do things that you don't always imagine you can do. A lot of what we deem as possible for ourselves, what we deem we can do as these body minds, what we are capable of, often is very limited to our ideas and self-worth and whatever we are conditioned. But this is also then breaking free from this. You are source. You are not operating within space and time, and you can do things that you might not seem possible. Things can happen to you that are not normal, or that are beyond what we deem is possible for each one of us, or feats, or things. If they are prompted by this deeper essence of yours, you will have the vitality. You will be able to fulfill these things. Not because the small self is makes it want to do, but because it is what is coming. It is what you are. It is a demonstration of itself. It is vitality, to have the vitality to fulfill your dharma, to fulfill why you are here, to fulfill being a vessel for the divine. All of it. So this is the beautiful Brahmacharya, moving towards the divine. It's something that might speak very deeply to you, because there is already the knowing. There is a knowing beyond this great love for the divine that is usually also present. and the devotion to that divine is a knowing you are this divine self. You are already that. You are simply remembering what you essentially are. Namaste.